Here was a time of present change but also of great contradiction. The Victorian age was a complex and contradictory era. It was the age of progressive stability, great social reform, but it was all characterized by poverty, injustice, and social unrest. The Victoria promoted a core of values that reflect the world of they wanted it to be, not as it really was, based no personal duty, hard work, respectability, and charity. The Victorian were great moralization, although the Victorian age was a good age of progressive innovation, and so there were so many things that if we think about it, they were so grown. For example, child labor, but it was so normal and necessary for families to survive. There was so much pollution which caused people to get sick all the time. All women were only allowed to stay at home whose to be a mother. They were not allowed to work. On the other hand, men were the only ones that could work back then. They did all the work, hard work, yet their family would have some time to eat. It was a really a complex age, even though there was progress some home.
Religion played an important role in people's life. Evangelicalism, in particular, encouraged public and political actions and created a lot of churches. Most Victorian Britons were Christians. The Anglican churches of England, Wales, and Ireland were the state churches, of which the monarch was the nominal head, and dominated the religious landscape. There was some religious diversity as also Britain was home to other non-Anglican Protestants, such as Roman Catholics, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and others. At the end of the period, there were even a few atheists. Alongside their faith, Victorians made an appreciated development in science. The best-known Victorian scientific development is that of the theory of evolution. It is typically credited to Charles Darwin, but versions of it were developed by earlier thinkers.
Let's talk about Victorian compromise. It was an age in which progress, reforms, and political stability coexist with poverty and injustice. Listening to sermons was a popular pastime. Yet vices were openly indulged. Modernity was praised, but there was a revival of Gothic and classicism in art. What about respectability? Respectability was a mixture of morality and hypocrisy, since the unpleasant aspects of society, like dissolution, poverty, social unrest, were hidden under outward respectability. There was growing emphasis on the duty of men to respect and protect women, seen at the same time as physically wicked but morally superior. Divine guide and inspiring of men, and finally, women controlled the family budget and brought up the children.
About middle-class women became increasingly involved in public life as leaders, in campaigns against prostitution, as teachers, and as volunteers, charitable workers. Further education opportunities for women became available with the opening of women's colleges in the 1870s. However, a strong taboo remained regarding family issues such as control over poverty, conditions of divorce, and rights over children, as well as questions of sex and childbirth. The 1882 Married Women's Property Act gave married women the right to own and manage their own property independently of their husbands for the first time. It is important to underline that a great number of novels published during the mid-Victorian period were written by women such as Charlotte and Emily Bronte. and George Eliot, of course, the pen name of Mary Ann Evans. This is surprising considering the state of subjection they live in. But it is less surprising if one remembers that the majority of novel buyers and readers were women. Middle class women had more time to spend at home than men and could devote part of the day to reading. However, it was not easy to get published, as some women used a male pseudonym in order to see their work in print.
Hello, my name is Yvette, and now I'm going to talk about question 6 and 7. Okay, question 6 is general attitudes to sex. General attitudes to sex were a crucial aspect of respectability, with an intense concern for female chastity, and single women with a child were marginalized as fallen women. Sexuality was generally repressed in both its public and private forms, and moralizing purity in most extreme manifestation gradually led to the denunciation of nudity in art, the building of sculpture generals in the rejection of words with a sexual connotation from everyday vocabulary. And the other question is, what Darwin's evolution theory influenced? Darwin presented his history of evolution and natural selection. According to Darwin's theory, all living creatures in existence have developed their first through a slow process of change and adaptation in struggle for survival. Unfavorable physical conditions determine the survival of a species, and unfavorable nesting extinction may evolve like the other animal from a less high organization for animal and monkey. On the one hand, Darwin's theory describes the version of creation given by the Bible. On the other hand, it seems to show that the universe was not static but perpetually developing, that the strongest survived in the weakest deserved to be defeated. Okay, and thank you.
Why were novels so important for the Victorians? I can to say that the main reason to the importance of the novel for the Victorians is because the readers and writers had a communion of opinion and interest about the situations and problems that happened in British during this time, about the poverty of the lower social class, the injustice, the disease, the exploitation of the children, and more through verse, essays, and even novels in the page of periodicals. Continue with the question number 9 with the psychological novel Victorian Times. I can to say that this kind of novel try to show us the duality of the Victorian society relate with the upper social class, trying to capture the monsters and illogical aspect to the life during this time. Also, this kind of short story tell us how two main characters, Dr. Delic and Mr. Hyde, within their respectable appearance and high society person, high a dark secret and a double personality, similar to the Victorians' upper social class.
Well, now I'm going to describe a little bit the idea that the Victorians had about the poverty. Well, at first, in the beginning of the 19th century, it is estimated that the 25% of the people were poor. The urban and rural people, the poor people, had in common that they had poor diet, insecure employment, insanity, overcrowded housing, and large families. This was a really big problem because you know what, if you don't have any money, enough money to support a family, if you have a big family or a large family, it's even harder to support that. Well, the real question here is, how did the Victorians view the poverty? Well, for the first part of the Victorian era, the predominant idea about poverty was to keep out of it. It was like an individual responsibility to keep out of poverty. And when a person finally did that, keeping out of poverty, it was a sign that poverty was the defect and individual rather as a result of the economic forces beyond the control of the person. As I mentioned before, being poor in that time was harder than it is nowadays. And the Victorian people were characterized by being indolent with the situation of the others.